Many years ago now, when I was in an assignment in which there was more than one of us priests, I made some arrangements. So I had the early Sunday Mass, and then the rest of the day was free to go meet up with some friends of mine who had invited me to get on their relatively new boat on a nice lake up in northern Indiana and spend the day just enjoying the summer weather. So I got there, and their boat was waiting on a slip, and we jumped in and just had a fantastic day. It was one of those motorboats that's big enough you can ski behind it. So we were doing a little bit of water sports behind that. Had certainly plenty of room for cooler and food and drinks and just a lovely day. And as time was going on, I started thinking to myself, this is really nice. Maybe I need to talk to maybe one of my brothers or one of my priest friends, and maybe we could go in on a boat because this is a nice way to spend a day off on a lake, in the water, just relaxing. And then I looking back, I started to get into that mode of that saying that he who has the most toys wins. Okay. One way to live life. But today the gospel, it reminds us that we cannot serve both God and material goods. So much of if we're not careful, our orientation in life is to pursue the goods of this world. And we begin to think that part of that is then in some ways our identity or our happiness is based on what and maybe even how much we own. And so the first thing the gospel is really helpful with us today is it talks about a steward. The steward is one who is not the owner, but is instead of charge of things. Now this is a nice steward that we have in the gospel. I mean, he's got a very rich owner, so he's got access to a lot of goods, but he's not been a good steward of those. He's not taking care of those things very well. And so there is a reckoning. So for us, the first reminder is, now we may have lots of things that on a piece of paper has our signature, and we can think that we are the owners. But the same amount of goods that we came into the world with will be the same that we leave the world with. And so there's a delusion that we own anything. Everything material in this life, in this world, is temporary. It will only be with us for a while. And so how we use those goods in service of not just ourselves, but as Amos reminds us, of others, especially in need, is much more of how we will serve God instead of mammon. And the more that we have that mentality, the more that we will find ourselves to be really free to then share those goods with others. Because if they're not mine to begin with, oh, well, where did they come from? They come from God, who is the source of all goodness in our life. And it's a reminder that the most important good that we are given by God are the goods of the world of the Spirit. The spiritual goods have the same kind of effect. They're not ours to just grasp and make our lives better, but they're given to us so that we can share that with others. And so we're even stewards of spiritual gifts. And how do we know that this is the case? Because the other thing we have to be reminded of is we do not own our own lives. When we baptize Adeline in a moment, parents are reminded in some ways this is a gift from God, and we are stewards of her life, and want to teach her how to give her life away in love and all the good that's in her life, starting with how she'll know God's goodness from us, right? And we want her to be able to share that with others, because sometimes parents get in the mode of, I want my child to be successful or super happy. But all that actually is rooted in, I want a child who knows love so much that the world knows about love because of the way she loves others. That's what our baptism does for all of us. And remember, like in the second reading, that Christ was the only mediator between God and us because we needed that redemption. And that not only is our lives not our own, but Jesus has purchased us through the blood of the cross. And that immersion that we have in the grace of the new life from that death on the cross and his resurrection is what we all celebrate in our baptism. And that's what we are all given to give away. Because what's really interesting about the parable, it takes a while to make sense, is that this super rich owner is actually interacting with some pretty rich landowners. If you're able to have a debt of 100 measures of olive oil or 100 cores of wheat, you don't have a hobby farm. You have almost like a corporate kind of farming business going on. And so if you are offered 50% off on a debt, I don't care what it is, 50% off, I'm already like, I'll probably buy that just because it's such a good discount, 20% is pretty good. And now the steward is actually on behalf of the owner showing what? Incredible generosity, incredible abundance. And we as stewards, particularly of the spiritual goods, and even through the material goods that have been given to us, all it's been given to us from God, are reminded of God's superabundance and our call to share it with others. Otherwise, we're serving other masters that will not serve us. Because as we were coming toward the end of the day, I started hearing about some of the other things about owning a boat. Like, we're going to have to get this thing out of the water and get it on the trailer, and then we got to take it home. Thankfully, we've got a little space back at home to store the boat on the trailer. And then, of course, they were telling me about how you have to service the boat, clean it all up, wrap it up for the winter, find a place to store it. And pretty soon you begin to realize the saying, the two happiest days of a boat owner is the day they buy the boat and the day they sell it. We've been purchased forever through the blood of Christ, who owns our lives and gives us the superabundance of his grace to share with others. You cannot serve both God and mammon. Let us recommit ourselves today to serve God.